The wedding day collapse. The village air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the sound of distant drums, but inside the dressing room, the atmosphere was strained. Kartiki stood tall in her heavy gold-embroidered bridal lehenga, checking her reflection with a critical eye. Behind her, Sija worked with trembling fingers to secure the heavy pleated silk of the bride's dupatta. Every movement was a struggle for Sija. A sharp, persistent pain radiated through her side, making her breath come in shallow hitches. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, trying to mask the grimace that threatened to break her composure. Girisha entered the room, her deep purple sari rustling softly against the floor. She noticed the sweat beading on Sija's forehead and moved closer, her brow furrowed with concern. "You look pale, Sija. You should sit down," Girisha whispered, reaching out to steady her friend. Sija shook her head slowly, her long black braids swaying. "I'm fine," Sija lied, her voice strained. "It's just the heat. Besides, with Shajit and Manav rushed off to Mumbai because of Shajit's father's heart attack, there is so much more for us to do. I cannot rest now." The Jaimala ceremony began under a canopy of vibrant marigolds. The village courtyard was packed with guests watching the sacred union. Sija was tasked with holding the ceremonial copper pot, topped with a sacred coconut and mango leaves, a heavy burden for someone whose strength was rapidly failing. Kartiki stood across from her groom, her expression cold and impatient, seemingly oblivious to the way Sija's knees were beginning to buckle under the weight of the traditional vessel. The world began to tilt and blur for Sija. The chanting of the priest sounded like it was coming from underwater, and the bright colors of the wedding faded into a dull gray. The pain in her side flared one last time, a white-hot spark that extinguished her remaining strength. Her grip failed, and the heavy copper pot tilted. As Sija's eyes rolled back, she slumped toward the hard stone floor, the coconut tumbling away as the ritual was violently interrupted. Chaos erupted. The sacred chant stopped abruptly, replaced by gasps and shouts of alarm. Meena, the mother of the bride, rushed forward, her face etched with terror. She and Girisha reached Sija at the same moment, dropping to their knees to shield her from the crowd. Together, they managed to hook their arms under Sija's limp frame. Meena's traditional village sari was swept up in the frantic movement as they prepared to carry her away from the center of the panicked guests. They carried Sija into a quiet, dimly lit bedroom and laid her gently across the floral bedspread. Girisha moved with practiced efficiency, immediately dipping a cloth into a basin of cool water. She began to bathe Sija's forehead, watching for any sign of consciousness. Meena stood by the foot of the bed, wringing her hands, her eyes darting between Sija's pale face and the doorway, the weight of the day's disasters pressing down on her shoulders. The door burst open, and Kartiki marched in, her heavy bridal jewelry clinking loudly in the quiet room. There was no concern in her eyes, only a burning, selfish rage. She gestured wildly at her stained lehenga, her face contorted with anger. "Look at this," she hissed, her voice trembling with venom. "The most important moment of my life, and she ruins it by making a scene. My wedding is a disaster because she couldn't just hold a pot for 5 minutes." Meena turned to face her daughter, her expression shifting from distress to a cold, hard sternness that Kartiki had rarely seen. The mother stood tall, her presence filling the small room as she stepped toward the bride. "Silence, Kartiki?" Meena snapped, her voice low and dangerous. "Your friend is lying here, possibly gravely ill, and you can only think of your clothes? I did not raise a daughter to be so heartless. Leave this room if you cannot find a shred of humanity for Sija." Girisha didn't even look up from Sija's side, but her voice was like ice. "Shajit and Manav are miles away, dealing with a life-and-death emergency, Kartiki. Sija has been suffering in silence all day just to support you, and this is how you repay her? Your wedding is just a day. Her life is what matters. Girisha's hand stayed firm on Sija's cold wrist, checking for a pulse, her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and utter disappointment as she glanced toward the bride. Kartiki lingered for a moment, the weight of their words finally sinking in, before she turned and fled back toward the empty courtyard. The room grew quiet again, save for Sija's ragged breathing. Girisha returned her full attention to her friend, gently stroking Sija's hair. She didn't know when the men would return or if Sija would be all right, but she refused to leave her side. In the heart of the village celebration, a quiet vigil had begun, fueled by a bond far deeper than any ceremony.